Welcome to the Restricted Handling Podcast. This is what's been going on in China in the past 24 hours. We're going to start in Latin America because that's where the geopolitical thunderclap hit. The United States conducted a surprise overnight military operation that captured Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and flew him out of the country. This was not a quiet snatch and grab. We're talking more than 150 U.S. military aircraft involved, a full-spectrum extraction, and a president in handcuffs headed to New York to face drug charges. Washington didn't just remove a dictator, it made a point. And Beijing got the message loud and clear. The timing is what really rattled China. Just hours before the raid, a senior Chinese delegation led by Special Envoy Chu Xiaoqi was sitting down with Maduro in Caracas, reaffirming China's political and economic backing. Then, boom, Maduro's gone. For Beijing, this wasn't just losing a partner, it was losing face. Venezuela has been one of China's closest allies in the Western Hemisphere, a place where Beijing poured billions into oil deals, infrastructure, and political capital. Overnight, that entire investment evaporated on live TV. China's reaction was unusually sharp. The foreign ministry went straight to sovereignty language, calling the operation hegemonic and a violation of international law. Foreign Minister Wang Yi followed up by saying China does not accept any country acting as the world's judge or police. That's diplomatic speak for, we're furious, and we don't have a move to stop it. Chinese diplomats privately described the situation as a serious blow to Beijing's credibility as a reliable partner. When you promise protection and can't deliver, everyone else in the room takes notes. Now here's the key thing. China isn't responding with tanks or missiles. It's responding with narrative warfare. State media and online commentary are hammering the idea that the US-led rules-based order is a myth, that raw power decides outcomes, and that Washington only respects international law when it's convenient. That message isn't just aimed outward, it's aimed inward, reinforcing a worldview Chinese leaders have been selling for years. This feeds directly into Taiwan. Over the past week, China wrapped up its largest ever military exercise around the island. The Justice Mission 2025 drills weren't just loud, they were different. More than 130 aircraft sorties, warships, Coast Guard vessels, missile activity, and for the first time in significant numbers, Chinese ships entered Taiwan's contiguous zone. That zone has always been a buffer, a place where things could be tense without crossing the line. That buffer is now being worn down, intentionally. One incident stood out. A Chinese destroyer only pulled back after a Taiwanese naval vessel applied radar lock. That's not a drill detail. That's a moment where a misread signal could spiral fast. The exercises rehearsed isolation and blockade scenarios, cut civilian air routes, and disrupted flights to Taiwan's outlying islands. The message was control, pressure, and normalization of proximity. At the same time, China kept the cyber pressure cranked to 11. Taiwan reported an average of 2.6 million cyber intrusion attempts per day throughout 2025, with spikes during military drills and political events. Power grids, hospitals, telecom networks, government agencies, and semiconductor facilities were all targeted. Ransomware hit hospitals. Supply chains were probed. This wasn't random hacking. It was coordinated, persistent, and timed to amplify physical military pressure. Then there's espionage. Taiwan's security services are seeing recruitment efforts that look more like a streaming thriller than Cold War spycraft. Dating apps, fake loan offers, social media grooming, in-person cultivation. About 80% of identified spies had military backgrounds. Taiwan charged dozens of people last year alone, and officials openly acknowledged that sensitive defense information may already be compromised. Taipei responded by rolling out sweeping counter-espionage measures, including restoring military courts. That's not a move you make lightly. Now zoom back to Beijing's diplomatic calendar, because while pressure ramps up on Taiwan, China is also trying to stabilize everything else. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung landed in Beijing for his first state visit since taking office, and the first by a South Korean leader in years. This happened hours after North Korea fired ballistic missiles and days after it test-fired hypersonic weapons. The optics were deliberate. Lee met Xi Jinping, the premier and China's top legislator. More than 200 South Korean business leaders came along, including the heads of Samsung, SK, and Hyundai. 9 cooperation agreements were signed covering AI, digital economy projects, supply chains, tourism, and consumer goods. It was a reset, or at least an attempt at one. But the security undercurrent was unmistakable. Lee wants Chinese help managing North Korea. China wants South Korea to keep some distance from Japan and stay predictable on Taiwan. Seoul reaffirmed respect for the One China policy, even as it balances a deep alliance with Washington. Cultural issues, like China's unofficial ban on Korean pop culture, remain unresolved, a reminder that Beijing still uses access as leverage. China also rolled out the welcome mat for Ireland. Xi Jinping met Irish Prime Minister Michel Martin in Beijing, emphasizing cooperation in artificial intelligence, pharmaceuticals, and the digital economy. This came right after China slapped steep tariffs on EU dairy products, widely seen as retaliation for European tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. The strategy here is clear. Pressure the bloc, charm select members, and try to shape the conversation ahead of Ireland's upcoming EU Council presidency. Meanwhile, the People's Liberation Army kicked off 2026 with nationwide combat-focused training across all services. This wasn't ceremonial. Army units drilled with unmanned systems, including bomb-dropping drones and FPV suicide drones. Navy destroyers conducted formation training. The Air Force emphasized immediate response launch scenarios. The Rocket Force ran live combat drills featuring hypersonic missiles, and J-20 stealth fighters were part of the mix. This is about readiness, muscle memory, and sending a signal that the clock is always running. Inside China, control tightened further. Authorities released a draft revision of the People's Police Law, expanding powers across public security, state security, courts, and prosecutors, while formally outlining punishments for abuse. At the same time, the anti-corruption campaign claimed its first senior official of the year. Last year alone, 65 high-ranking figures, including senior military officers, were investigated. The message from the top is discipline, loyalty, and no room for freelancing. Step back and look at the board, and the pattern is pretty clear. The U.S. just demonstrated that it's willing to act decisively and unpredictably. China responded by hardening its narrative, tightening internal control, pressuring Taiwan across every domain short of war, and scrambling diplomatically to prevent isolation. This isn't escalation for tomorrow morning. It's positioning for the long game, with fewer buffers, more friction, and a lot more opportunities for things to go sideways fast. Thanks so much for listening and for being part of the RH community. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribing, leaving a quick 5-star review, or sharing it with someone you know makes a huge difference. It's how this network will grow. We also publish a daily written intel brief on Substack, where you'll find even deeper coverage of Russia and China, along with insights on the Middle East and the DPRK. This is free for Substack subscribers. Starting January 16th, new Substack subscribers will move to a paid model. If you're already subscribed on Substack before then, nothing changes. You'll keep full access to everything, free forever. New subscribers after January 15th will receive the daily written brief, weekly deep dives on economics, sanctions, and more for a monthly fee. So if you're not on Substack yet, don't worry. Just head to restrictedhandling.com and subscribe now for free and get the content free forever.